Zok was an alien scout from the planet Corva, a world known for its strict, logical warriors. For years, Zok had traveled across the galaxy, observing different species. He had seen many kinds of soldiers and fighters, each with their own way of battling. But today, he was witnessing something new and strange. Humans. Zok's small ship was hidden behind a hill, far from where the humans were training. From this spot, he had a clear view of the camp. Through his advanced binoculars, he could see the humans running, lifting weights, and practicing combat. At first, it seemed normal. They were not as big or strong as some other species Zok had seen. They didn't have heavy armor or high-tech weapons, yet there was something different about the way they moved. The humans were fast, not just in speed, but in how they reacted to things. Zok watched as two of them sparred, their movements sharp and precise. They dodged, blocked, and attacked, but what amazed him was how they seemed to know what their opponent would do next. Zok had seen robots with perfect programming, but these humans fought like they were reading each other's minds. Zok's curiosity grew. How can they do this? He thought. On Corva, warriors followed strict rules. Every move was calculated and planned. But these humans did the opposite. They were unpredictable, changing their tactics mid-fight. It was chaotic, yet somehow it worked. As Zok continued to watch, he saw a group of humans gathering around their leader, a man in a green uniform with short, dark hair. The leader, Captain Lee, spoke with a strong, calm voice. He was explaining a new training exercise. Zok noticed how the humans listened carefully, nodding their heads, but also asking questions. It was clear that they respected Captain Lee, but they were not afraid to speak up. That's different, Zok thought. On his planet, orders were given, and everyone followed without question. There was no room for discussion. But here, it seemed like the humans were encouraged to think for themselves. Zok realized that this might be one of their strengths. The training exercise began. The humans split into teams, each team trying to outsmart the others. Zok watched closely, trying to understand their tactics. They didn't attack head-on like Corvan soldiers would. Instead, they used tricks. One team pretended to retreat, only to circle around and surprise their opponents from behind. Another team set up traps, waiting for the right moment to strike. Zok was fascinated. He had seen similar tactics used in Corvan battle simulations, but the humans were doing it with such creativity. They weren't following a set plan. They were making decisions in the moment, adjusting as they went along. It was almost as if they were playing a game, but a game with serious consequences. For hours, Zok watched as the humans trained. Even when they made mistakes, they didn't get angry or frustrated. They laughed, slapped each other on the back, and tried again. It was as if they enjoyed the challenge, as if each failure was just another step toward getting better. This was something Zok had never seen before. On Corva, failure was shameful. Warriors who failed would be punished or sent back to training. But these humans seemed to see failure as part of the process, a chance to learn and improve. As the sun began to set, the training ended. The humans gathered around a campfire, eating, talking, and laughing. Zok felt a strange feeling in his chest. It was like a mix of envy and admiration. These humans were so different from the cold, disciplined warriors of Corva. They were warm, friendly, and full of life. Zok thought about returning to his ship and sending a report to his commanders. But he hesitated. He wanted to learn more. He wanted to understand why these humans were so effective, even though they didn't seem to follow any rules. What is their secret? He wondered. How do they fight like this? As he stood there, hidden behind the hill, Zok made a decision. He would stay and keep watching. Maybe, just maybe, he could learn something valuable from these humans. Something he could take back to Corva. Something that could change the way his people fought. Zok was a scout, and his job was to observe. But for the first time in his life, he didn't just want to observe. He wanted to understand. He wanted to see if there was more to these humans than just strange tactics and quick moves. And so, as the night grew darker, Zoc stayed in his hiding spot, watching the humans as they relaxed by the fire. He didn't know what he would discover, but he was ready to find out. The Hidden Observer. Zoc had spent many nights watching the humans from his hidden spot. He learned their routines and knew exactly when they would start training and when they would rest. Zoc's small ship was well camouflaged behind the hill, covered with a special material that made it almost invisible. He was careful, never getting too close, always staying out of sight. Every morning, just as the sun was rising, Zoc would see Captain Lee and his team start their warm-ups. They would run, stretch, and practice their moves, getting ready for the day's training. Zoc's eyes followed every movement. He wanted to understand everything about these humans. What made them different? Why were their techniques so unpredictable and creative? Zoc used his advanced binoculars to zoom in. He could see their faces clearly, the sweat on their brows, the determination in their eyes. He noticed how they communicated without words during training. A quick nod, a glance, a slight movement of the hand. It was as if they had their own secret language. Zoc was amazed at how they understood each other so well without saying much. One day, Zoc decided to take a closer look. He left his ship and carefully crept down the hill, hiding behind rocks and bushes. He moved quietly, making sure no one saw him. Now he was close enough to hear their voices, even if he didn't understand every word. Captain Lee was giving instructions to his team. Remember, stay flexible. If Plan A doesn't work, switch to Plan B. If that doesn't work, make a new plan. Don't be afraid to think outside the box. Zoc tilted his head, confused. Think outside the box. He repeated quietly to himself. On Corva, there was no such thing. Warriors followed strict protocols. There were no Plan B or C. You followed the plan, and if it failed, you tried harder. But these humans were different. They were prepared to change their approach at any moment, and they seemed to like it. The training started, and once again, the humans split into teams. Zoc saw them practicing different scenarios. Some teams acted as attackers, while others defended. They would switch roles and try new strategies. Zoc noticed that they rarely repeated the same tactic. Each time, they tried something new, as if they were constantly experimenting. One team pretended to be surrounded, but instead of fighting their way out, they used distractions. One of the humans threw a small device that made a loud noise, while the others quickly moved to a safer position. Zoc was surprised. It was a simple trick, but it worked. Why didn't they just fight? He thought. But then he realized, humans didn't just fight. They outsmarted their enemies. Zoc watched for hours, fascinated by every move. He took notes on his small device, recording everything he saw. Sometimes he had to zoom in closer, his binoculars almost touching his face. He didn't want to miss a single detail. As the day went on, the humans took a break. They sat in a circle, drinking water and talking. Zoc noticed that they were still discussing their training, sharing ideas, and giving each other tips. They weren't afraid to point out mistakes, but they did it in a friendly way. It was clear that they respected each other, and even when they disagreed, they listened. Zoc's mind was buzzing with questions. Why do they do this? Why do they share their ideas so freely? On Corva, there was no such thing as discussing mistakes. You learned in silence, and if you made a mistake, you paid the price. But these humans seemed to believe that learning was a group effort. Zoc found this strange, yet interesting. Later that evening, the humans set up a new training exercise. This time, they used more advanced equipment, small drones that flew around, acting as targets. The humans had to hit these moving targets while avoiding obstacles. Zoc was amazed at how quickly they adapted to the challenge. Some missed, but they didn't give up. They kept trying until they got it right. As Zoc observed, he saw something he hadn't noticed before. The humans weren't just practicing to get better. They were having fun. They laughed, made jokes, and even celebrated when someone hit a difficult target. For them, training wasn't just work. It was a way to bond, to build trust, and to enjoy each other's company. Zoc felt a pang of envy. On Corva, training was serious and strict. There was no laughter, no joy. Warriors trained alone, focused only on themselves. But here, the humans trained together, and it made them stronger. Zoc wondered if this was the key to their success. As the sun began to set, Zoc realized he had spent the entire day watching the humans. He was so absorbed in their activities that he forgot to eat or rest. But he didn't mind. He had learned so much, and yet he felt there was still more to understand. Zoc quietly made his way back to his ship, careful not to be seen. He thought about everything he had observed. The humans were unpredictable, creative, and flexible. They didn't follow strict rules, and they seemed to find strength in their teamwork. Zoc wondered if he could take these lessons back to Corva. Would his people understand? Would they even be willing to learn from humans? For now, Zoc decided to keep watching. Maybe there was still more to learn. Maybe if he stayed long enough, he could discover the true secret behind the humans' strange but effective ways. The unexpected challenge. Zoc had been observing the humans for days now, but he still couldn't figure out the secret behind their strange, effective techniques. He admired how they worked together and adapted quickly, but he needed to understand more. Zoc was tired of hiding and decided it was time to get closer. The next morning, Zoc carefully prepared himself. He adjusted his translator device so he could speak to the humans without any problems. He took a deep breath, making sure his appearance was not too intimidating. On Corva, his blue scales and glowing yellow eyes were normal, but he knew humans might find him strange. Zoc was determined, though. He wanted to learn, and the best way to learn was to ask. As the humans started their warm-ups, Zoc stepped out from behind the hill, walking slowly toward their camp. At first, no one noticed him, but when he got closer, one of the guards saw him and quickly raised his weapon. Zoc stopped, raised his hands, and spoke calmly. "I come in peace. I am Zoc, a scout from the planet Corva. I have been watching your training, and I am impressed." The humans looked at each other, surprised. They had heard about aliens, but this was the first time they had seen one up close. Captain Lee stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Zoc. He was cautious but curious. "What do you want, Zoc?" Captain Lee asked, his voice calm but firm. "I want to learn," Zoc replied. "Your techniques are different. They are unique. I would like to understand how you fight, how you train. I believe I can learn something valuable from you." The humans exchanged glances. They didn't expect an alien to show up out of nowhere and ask to join their training. Some of them were skeptical. Why would an alien be interested in their methods? But Captain Lee saw an opportunity. He was always open to new experiences, and this could be a chance to learn something about Zoc's species too. "All right, Zoc," Captain Lee said. "If you want to learn, you'll have to train with us. But be warned, we don't go easy on anyone, not even aliens." Zoc smiled, revealing his sharp white teeth. "I understand. I am ready." The humans formed a circle around Zoc, curious to see how this would play out. Captain Lee explained the rules. "We will start with a simple match. You and I will spar. The goal is not to win but to show your technique. Are you ready?" Zoc nodded, his heart pounding with excitement. He had been waiting for this moment. He thought he was ready, but he didn't know what to expect. Zoc took his stance, spreading his legs and raising his arms, ready to defend himself. Captain Lee moved first, quick and smooth. He didn't attack directly but circled around Zoc, watching his every move. Zoc tried to keep up, but Lee was faster than he expected. Suddenly, Lee dashed forward, aiming a punch at Zoc's side. Zoc blocked it easily, but before he could react, Lee had already moved to the other side, tapping Zoc on the shoulder. It was a light touch, but it showed that Lee had outmaneuvered him. Zoc was surprised. On Corva, fights were straightforward, with powerful attacks and strong defenses. But Lee's movements were fluid and unpredictable. Zoc tried to counter, but Lee dodged his strike and moved behind him, tapping his back. The humans watching cheered and laughed, impressed by how easily Captain Lee was able to move around Zoc. Zoc, however, was frustrated. He had strength, but he couldn't keep up with Lee's speed. How is he doing this? Zoc thought. They continued sparring, and Zoc realized that Lee wasn't just faster. He was reading Zoc's movements, predicting what he would do next. It was like Lee knew exactly where Zoc was going to strike even before Zoc did. Zoc tried to use more power, but it didn't help. Lee stayed calm, dodging and weaving, making Zoc miss again and again. After a few minutes, Lee stepped back and lowered his hands, signaling the end of the match. Zoc was breathing heavily, confused but also excited. He had never faced an opponent like this. "You rely too much on strength," Lee said, smiling. "That's not always the best way. Sometimes you need to be flexible. If your opponent is strong, be faster. If they are fast, be smarter. You have to adapt." Zoc listened carefully, trying to understand. "On Corva, we are taught to follow strict training and powerful strikes," he said. "We do not change plans." Lee nodded. "That might work sometimes, but it won't always. Here, we learn to think on our feet. We don't have a perfect plan, but we are always ready to change it if we need to." Zoc was amazed. This was exactly what he wanted to learn. "Will you teach me?" he asked, his yellow eyes glowing with hope. Captain Lee looked at his team, then back at Zoc. "If you're willing to train hard, then yes. But you'll have to prove yourself. We don't just give away our secrets." Zoc understood. This was a challenge, but it was also an opportunity. "I will train with you," he said. "I will prove that I can learn." The humans smiled, some of them cheering. They had never seen anything like this, and they were excited to see how Zoc would handle the training. For Zoc, this was just the beginning. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to do whatever it took to learn from these humans. As they prepared for the next training session, Zoc felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Excitement. He didn't just want to observe anymore. He wanted to be part of this, and for the first time, he felt like he was no longer just a hidden observer. He was ready to be a student. A lesson in strategy. The sun was bright, and the training field was buzzing with energy. Zoc stood in the middle, surrounded by the humans. He had been training with them for a few days now, but he was still struggling. Captain Lee's team was patient, but they made it clear, if Zoc wanted to learn, he had to give it his best effort. The humans didn't fight like anyone Zoc had ever seen. They were fast, clever, and unpredictable. Zoc was used to direct, powerful attacks, but the humans seemed to flow around him, always changing their tactics. It was frustrating, but it also excited him. He knew there was something important to learn here, something that could change everything he thought he knew about combat. Today's training was focused on strategy. Captain Lee stood at the front, explaining the plan. "Zoc, you're strong, and that's good. But sometimes strength alone isn't enough. Today, we're going to teach you how to think like a human soldier." Zoc tilted his head, curious. "Think like a human? What do you mean?" Captain Lee smiled. "Humans don't just rely on strength. We use strategy. We adapt to the situation. We change our approach based on what our enemy does. Let me show you." He pointed to two teams on the field. Team A will try to attack, and Team B will defend. But Team B won't just stand there. They'll be moving, setting traps, and using distractions. You'll see what I mean. The exercise began, and Zoc watched closely. Team A charged forward, but Team B was ready. Instead of meeting them head-on, they split up, moving in different directions. One of the defenders threw a smoke grenade, creating a thick cloud that blocked Team A's view. While Team A hesitated, trying to figure out what was happening, Team B circled around them and launched a surprise attack from the sides. Zock's eyes widened. They are not following a straight path. They are creating confusion. Captain Lee nodded. Exactly. In battle, sometimes the best way to win is not to fight directly. Make your opponent guess what you're going to do next. Keep them off balance. Zock was impressed. On Corva, soldiers were trained to face their enemies head-on, never to deceive or trick them. But here, it was different. The humans saw combat as a kind of game, where the goal was to outsmart the opponent, not just overpower them. Now it's your turn, Zock, said Captain Lee. You're going to lead a team. Your job is to attack Team B, remember. Don't just rely on your strength. Think about how you can use strategy to win. Zock felt nervous. He had been a scout, not a commander, but he was willing to try. He gathered his team, which included 3 human soldiers. They looked at him, waiting for his plan. Zock took a deep breath and spoke. We will move fast and strike hard. I will lead the charge. One of the humans, a soldier named Maria, raised her hand. That's a good start, but what if they set a trap for us? We need to be ready to change our plan. Zock frowned. On Corva, orders were orders. There was no room for change, but he could see that the humans were different. What do you suggest? He asked. Maria smiled. We can split into 2 groups. One will attack from the front, and the other will sneak around the side. If they try to block the front group, the side team can hit them from behind. We'll be flexible and change our approach if we need to. Zock thought for a moment, then nodded. All right, let's do it. The training match began, and Zock led his team forward. Just as he expected, Team B set up a defense, blocking the main path. But instead of pushing harder, Zock remembered Maria's advice. He signaled the second group to move around the side, quietly sneaking behind Team B's position. As Team B focused on stopping Zock's charge, they didn't notice the second group until it was too late. The second group attacked from behind, catching Team B by surprise. Zock's team quickly gained the upper hand, forcing Team B to retreat. Zock felt a rush of excitement. This was the first time he had successfully used strategy, and it felt good. When the match ended, Captain Lee clapped his hands. Well done, Zock. You adapted. You didn't just rely on strength, and that's why you won. Zock was surprised. I did not think it would work. On Corvo, we are taught that changing plans is a sign of weakness. Captain Lee shook his head. Not here. Here, it's a sign of intelligence. Battles are not always predictable. If you stick to one plan, your enemy will find a way to beat you. But if you're flexible, you can turn the situation to your advantage. Zock thought about this. He realized that his training on Corva had taught him to be strong, but not to think creatively. The humans were different. They didn't see mistakes as failures. They saw them as chances to learn and improve. Zock understood now why they were so good at what they did. They weren't just fighting with their bodies. They were fighting with their minds. After the training, Zock approached Captain Lee. I want to learn more, he said. Teach me how to think like you do. I want to understand how to use strategy, not just strength. Captain Lee smiled. We'll teach you, Zock, but it won't be easy. You have to be willing to change the way you think. You have to be ready to see things from a new perspective. I am ready, Zock said, his yellow eyes glowing with determination. I want to learn. I want to understand. The humans gathered around Zock, giving him pats on the back and words of encouragement. Zock felt something he hadn't felt before, a sense of belonging. He was no longer just an outsider observing from a distance. He was a part of their team, learning and growing alongside them. For Zock, this was more than just a lesson in strategy. It was a new way of seeing the world. He realized that strength alone was not enough. Sometimes, the greatest strength came from being able to adapt, to change, and to think differently. And for the first time, He felt like he was beginning to understand the true secret of the humans. Learning from humans. Zoc was starting to feel more comfortable around the humans. At first, he thought it would be difficult to train with them, but every day he learned something new. The way they fought, the way they trained, and even the way they talked to each other was different from anything he had seen on Corva. Zoc was determined to absorb everything he could. One morning, as the sun was just beginning to rise, Captain Lee gathered everyone for a special training session. "Today we're going to teach you how to improvise," he said. "You see, in real battles, things don't always go as planned. Sometimes you have to make quick decisions and find solutions to problems you didn't expect." Zoc listened carefully. On Corva, warriors followed strict protocols. There was a plan for every situation, and if a warrior faced a problem, they had to solve it within the rules. But here, Captain Lee was suggesting something different. Finding solutions on the spot, even if it meant breaking the rules. "What do you mean by improvising?" Zoc asked, curious. Captain Lee smiled. "It means thinking quickly, using what you have, and sometimes even making things up as you go along. It's not about following a perfect plan. It's about creating a plan when you need one." Zoc thought about this. It sounded risky, but also exciting. He wanted to learn how humans did it. "How do I learn to improvise?" he asked. "We'll show you," said Captain Lee. "Let's start with a simple exercise. Imagine you're in a battle, and your weapon stops working. What do you do?" Zoc frowned. On Corva, a warrior without a weapon was as good as defeated. "I do not know," he admitted. "That's okay," said Maria, one of the soldiers. She was always cheerful and patient. "The first step is to stay calm. Don't panic. Look around and see what you can use. Maybe there's a rock, a stick, or even a piece of equipment you can fix quickly. The key is to keep your mind open." Zoc nodded, but he still felt unsure. Could he really think that fast in the middle of a battle? The humans set up a scenario to help him practice. They gave him a training sword and set up a few obstacles around the field. "All right, Zoc," said Captain Lee. "Let's see how you handle this." The training started, and Zoc moved forward, ready to face the challenges. He was focused, his eyes scanning the area. Suddenly, one of the obstacles activated, and his training sword stopped working. Zoc froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. "Don't stop," shouted Maria. "Keep moving. Find something else to use." Zoc looked around and saw a metal pipe lying on the ground. He quickly picked it up, using it as a makeshift weapon. It felt strange, but it was better than having nothing. He continued to move, using the pipe to block attacks and push through the obstacles. When the exercise ended, the humans clapped and cheered. "You see, that's improvising," said Captain Lee. "You didn't have a plan, but you found a way to keep going." Zoc was surprised. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. He had never thought of using random objects as weapons before. "So, improvising means using whatever you have?" he asked. "Exactly," said Maria. "It's about being creative. Sometimes the best solutions aren't the ones you planned. They're the ones you come up with when you need them." As the day went on, the humans showed Zoc more examples of improvisation. They set up different scenarios, each one with a new problem to solve. In one exercise, Zoc had to climb over a wall without any proper tools. Instead of giving up, he found a way to use his jacket as a rope, tying it to a hook and pulling himself up. In another scenario, his team was surrounded, and they had to find a way to distract the enemy. Zoc remembered what he had seen earlier and suggested throwing a small smoke bomb to create confusion. It worked, and his team managed to escape. Zoc was starting to understand. Improvising wasn't just about finding random solutions. It was about thinking creatively, looking at the situation from different angles, and not being afraid to try new things. It was a new way of thinking, one that he had never been taught on Corva. During a break, Zoc sat with the humans, talking and laughing. They treated him like one of their own, even though he was different. He was still learning, but he felt like he was making progress. "You're getting better, Zoc," said Captain Lee. "At first, you were hesitant, but now you're starting to see things differently. That's what makes a good soldier, being able to adapt." Zoc smiled, feeling proud. "On Corva, we are taught to be strong, to follow the rules. But here, I am learning that strength is not just about power. It is about flexibility." Captain Lee nodded. "That's right. Strength is important, but so is being able to change. Sometimes, the strongest warrior isn't the one who can hit the hardest, but the one who can think the fastest." Zoc thought about this for a long time. He had always believed that strength came from following strict rules and training hard. But now he saw that there was another kind of strength, one that came from being open-minded, from being able to adapt to new situations. As the sun began to set, Zoc felt a deep sense of gratitude. The humans had shown him a different way to fight, a different way to think. He wasn't just learning new techniques, he was learning how to be a better warrior. That evening, as they all sat around the campfire, Zoc spoke up. "I have learned much from you," he said, "but I still have more to learn. Will you continue to teach me?" Captain Lee looked at Zoc, his eyes warm. "Of course, Zoc. As long as you're willing to learn, we're willing to teach." Zoc felt a sense of belonging that he had never felt before. He had come here as a scout, a hidden observer, but now he was part of their team. He wasn't just learning from the humans, he was becoming one of them. And for the first time, he felt like he was truly ready to face any challenge that came his way. The breakthrough. Zoc woke up feeling different. It was a new day, and he could sense that something special was about to happen. After days of training with the humans, he felt more confident than ever. He had learned to improvise and adapt. But today, he was ready for a challenge that would test everything he had learned so far. Captain Lee gathered everyone for a new exercise. "Today, we're going to focus on teamwork," he announced. "You've all been training hard, but now it's time to work together. Zoc, you will lead your team in a simulated mission." Zoc's heart raced. This was his chance to show what he had learned. "What is the mission?" he asked, trying to hide his excitement. Lee explained, "Your team will have to retrieve an important item from a guarded area. You need to use strategy, improvisation, and teamwork to get past the defenses. Remember, this is not just about strength. It's about how well you can work together." Zoc nodded, feeling the mix of nervousness and determination. He gathered his team, which included Maria and 2 other soldiers, John and Alex. They stood together, ready for the challenge. "All right, team," Zoc began, trying to sound confident. "We need to come up with a plan. The item is inside a building, but there will be guards. We need to find a way to distract them and get in without being seen." Maria suggested, "We can use smoke bombs to create confusion. I can throw one near the entrance, and while the guards are distracted, we can slip inside." "That's a great idea," Zoc replied. "But we also need to think about how we'll get the item and escape quickly." John spoke up. "What if we split into 2 groups? One group can create the distraction while the other goes in to grab the item. That way, we can cover more ground." Zoc liked the idea. "Okay, let's do it. Maria and I will create the distraction, and John and Alex will go inside to hit the item. We have to be quick and communicate with each other." The team felt energized, ready to put their plan into action. They moved towards the simulated guarded area, where a mock building stood surrounded by obstacles. Zoc and Maria took their positions while John and Alex prepared to sneak inside. As they approached the building, Zoc took a deep breath, remembering everything he had learned. "On 3, we throw the smoke bombs," he said. 1, 2, 3. Maria and Zoc threw their smoke bombs at the entrance, and a thick cloud filled the air. The guards, who were part of the exercise, quickly turned their heads, confused by the sudden change in visibility. Zoc felt a surge of adrenaline. "Now go," he shouted. While the guards were distracted, John and Alex dashed toward the building. Zoc watched nervously, hoping they would reach their goal. Maria stayed close, ready to throw another smoke bomb if needed. Inside the building, John and Alex moved quietly, sticking to the shadows. They had trained for this moment and were determined to succeed. Zoc could see them through a small window, their eyes focused on the target. They located the item, a glowing orb that was meant to represent a critical piece of technology. Just as they reached for it, one of the guards caught a glimpse of movement. "Hey, over there," he shouted. Zoc's heart dropped. They had to act fast. "Maria," Zoc yelled. "We need to help them." Without hesitation, Maria threw another smoke bomb toward the entrance, creating more chaos. Zoc felt a rush of determination. "Let's go," he shouted, charging toward the building to support his team. As Zoc entered the smoke-filled area, he couldn't see clearly. He focused on the sounds, listening for his teammates. "John, Alex," he called out. Suddenly, he heard Alex's voice. "We have the orb. We're coming out." Zoc felt relief wash over him. He quickly made his way through the smoke, using his strength to push aside the guards who were trying to block their escape. The guards stumbled in the confusion, unable to see through the smoke. Maria stayed close to Zoc, throwing more smoke bombs to keep the guards off balance. Together, they fought their way back to their exit point, making sure John and Alex could escape safely. Finally, they reached the outside, panting and exhilarated. "We did it," Zoc shouted, holding the orb triumphantly. His team cheered, their faces lit with excitement. Captain Lee approached, clapping his hands. "That was fantastic. You worked together perfectly, Zoc. You didn't just rely on your strength, you used your mind and your team's skills to succeed." Zoc beamed with pride. This was more than just a victory. It was a breakthrough. He had led his team, used strategy, and learned how to adapt in real time. For the first time, he felt like a true warrior, not just a scout. As they all gathered around to celebrate, Zoc looked at his teammates. "Thank you for believing in me," he said sincerely. "I could not have done this without all of you." Maria smiled. "You did great, Zoc. You're becoming one of us. We all learned from each other today." John nodded. "Yeah, we've come a long way since you first showed up. You're not just an outsider anymore." Zoc felt warmth in his chest. He had started as a curious observer, but now he was part of a team. He realized that strength was not just about physical power. It was about connection, teamwork, and the willingness to learn from one another. As the sun set on the training field, Zoc felt grateful. He had learned so much from the humans, and they had shown him a new way of thinking. He was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, and he knew that together they could achieve anything. Today was just the beginning of his journey, and he was excited to see where it would take him. A new friendship. The days passed, and Zoc continued to train with the humans. Each day brought new lessons, new challenges, and new friends. He felt more at home with them, and he began to understand their ways. But there was one person he felt especially close to, Maria. Maria was cheerful and always supportive. She had a way of making everyone feel important, even when the training was tough. Zoc admired her spirit and how she faced every challenge with a smile. One evening, as they sat around a campfire after a long day of training, Zoc decided to talk to her. "Maria," he said, looking at the flames dancing in front of them. "You have taught me much. I feel stronger because of you and the others." Maria smiled, her eyes sparkling in the firelight. "We're all learning from each other, Zoc. You've become a valuable part of our team. We wouldn't be the same without you." Zoc felt warmth spread through him. He had never had friends like this before. Back on Corva, he had always been focused on training and strength. But here, he was learning the importance of friendship and teamwork. "Sometimes I feel unsure," Zoc admitted. "You all fight differently. You think differently. I worry I will not be strong enough. Maria shook her head. It's okay to feel that way. Everyone has doubts sometimes, but being strong isn't just about fighting. It's about being part of a team. You have your own strengths, and we all appreciate them. Zoc pondered her words. He realized that being part of a team meant more than just fighting together. It was about trust, understanding, and supporting one another. He felt a bond forming with Maria that was deeper than anything he had experienced before. The next day, Captain Lee announced a special training event. Today, we're going to focus on teamwork and communication. We'll do an obstacle course that requires each of you to work together to complete it. Zoc was excited. He had faced many challenges, but this one felt different. He wanted to prove not just to himself, but to his teammates that he could lead them to success. As they approached the obstacle course, Zoc took a moment to assess the challenges. There were walls to climb, tunnels to crawl through, and ropes to swing across. "All right, team," Zoc said, looking at Maria, John, and Alex. "We need to communicate clearly and support each other through each obstacle." Maria nodded. "Let's stick together. If someone is struggling, we'll help them." The course began, and Zoc led the way. They faced the first wall, which was high and intimidating. "I'll go first and help pull you up," Zoc suggested, his muscles tensing as he prepared to climb. Zoc reached the top and stretched his arm down to help Maria. "Come on. I've got you." With Zoc's help, she was able to climb up to his level. Once at the top, Zoc looked down at the rest of his team. "Now it's your turn, John. Just keep your eyes on me, and you can do it." John took a deep breath and started to climb. With Zoc and Maria cheering him on, he made it over the wall. They cheered, their voices echoing in the morning air. Next came the tunnel. It was dark and narrow, but they all crawled through together, supporting each other. "Stay close and don't panic," Zoc encouraged. Maria squeezed his hand as they crawled, and he felt a rush of determination. As they emerged from the tunnel, they found themselves in front of a swinging rope. Zoc felt a bit nervous. "This one looks tricky," he admitted. "I can try first," Maria said, her voice steady. "If I can do it, you all can too." With a running start, Maria swung across the rope, landing safely on the other side. Zoc felt proud. "Great job. Now let's all follow her." One by one, they took turns swinging across. Zoc was last, and he felt the pressure. He ran forward, leaped, and caught the rope. He swung across, landing with a thud on the other side. His teammates cheered. "See," Zoc said, grinning. "We can do this together." As they neared the end of the course, Zoc could feel the excitement building. They faced the final challenge, a tall wall that required teamwork to scale. "This is it," he shouted. "We'll make it if we work together." Zoc climbed to the top and reached down to help Maria up. "Grab my hand," he yelled. With a strong pull, he helped her up. John and Alex followed, and soon they were all on top of the wall, cheering together. "We did it," Maria shouted, throwing her arms up in victory. Zoc felt a wave of happiness wash over him. This moment was special. They had faced the obstacles together, and their teamwork had made them stronger. Captain Lee approached, smiling proudly. "Great job, everyone. You've shown what true teamwork looks like. Zoc, you did an excellent job leading your team. You've really grown." Zoc beamed, feeling a sense of accomplishment. He had learned not just about strength, but about friendship and trust. Maria stepped closer to him, her smile bright. "I'm so glad to have you as a friend, Zoc. You're amazing." Zoc felt his heart race. He had never had a friend like Maria before. "Thank you, Maria. I feel the same way. Together, we can face anything." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the training field, Zoc looked around at his teammates. He felt grateful for the friendships he had formed and the lessons he had learned. He had come to this place as a curious alien, But now he was part of something much bigger, a family of friends ready to take on the universe together. With newfound confidence and a heart full of hope, Zoc was excited for the adventures that lay ahead, knowing that he would never have to face them alone.